said, so, how's your week going? And he said, good. I said, well, how many patients did you see yesterday? He said, 6. I said, so what did you do afterwards? He said, I was bored. I didn't have anything to do for the rest of the day, so I went ahead and visited 5 of my patients who were in a nursing home. And I said, how did they feel when you walked in? He said, oh, their eyes light up every time. So it's the little things. It's sending a handwritten note. It's when the patient comes in, it's greeting them by their name. It's asking them about their family. It's finding out, it's going back into the record and saying, the last time I saw you, you had a really bad cold. How did you recover? Was the antibiotic that I might have given you for your ear infection, did it work? It's those little things that make the patient just say, wow, this is the way it should be.
I love this photo taken at the last Concierge Medicine Forum when we were all able to gather live and in person, and we will again, I promise. But we had a group of physicians in concierge medicine and an attorney get together for a panel to discuss what the future of medicine is truly going to look like. And one of the things that came out of there, one of the topics or the phrases that came out of there, the themes, was every doctor is in the customer service business. And I love that, the essence of what that means, because right now I don't know what it's like to be a doctor, but I do know what it's like to sit on the other side of you. I know what it's like to be sitting in that exam room, feeling all alone, feeling like you're hurried, you're rushed, and I'm not going to get my answers. So earlier this year, we put to the test a topic, which is how do we deliver great, how can we support doctors by delivering great messages of gratitude that communicate thankfulness all year long. So we put together a new course here at Concierge Medicine today, and within this course, you can go to courses over there on the left-hand side of your screen. And we put together a course called How to Implement a Patient Gratitude System. And I know that you're going to want to check it out because we've got something for every single month of the year. And it's just a unique little place, it's a unique little course that offers something unique that you could do to enhance the patient experience, to communicate how thankful you are towards your patients. Because doctors of the future are going to be more concerned, the great doctors of the future are going to be much more concerned about becoming fans of their patients than having it be the other way around. And not only that, not only did we put together this great course for you, we put the course to the test. And we asked doctors earlier this year, and we sent doctors hundreds of thank you notes, personally handwritten by myself, with a gift inside. And you responded in spades. And I have a whole drawer full as well as of all of those notes. So I want to thank you for that. So I want you to go check out our new course, How to Create a Patient Gratitude System all year long with your patients. I know
everybody knows. I got a feeling I just can't hide. Burning brightly, you see it in my eyes.
He is going to teach us how to create an ice pack, right?
So if you
everything's gonna be alright. Ooh, now you're making me feel. Ooh, now you're making me feel. Ooh, now you're making me feel. Everything's gonna be alright. Just believe it, knew it from the start.
So our guest today here at the Concierge Medicine Forum, our next speaker is Nadia Bilchik, and she has an impressive resume, an impressive background, and she's here to talk to us about authentically connecting over this new world, this new technology that we're in. So Nadia, thank you for being here with us.
Michael, it's such a pleasure. And my first piece of resume that I have to share with you is that I have 3 siblings who are all physicians. I have a brother who is a cancer surgeon in Los Angeles. I have a sister who's a headache specialist at Yale, and a brother who is a cardiologist in Boston. So let's start with that. And then the fact that I have spent the last 3 decades of my life either in front of or behind a television camera. So I actually began my career in South Africa anchoring for MNet television. And then when I came to the United States in 1997, I anchored for the CNN Airport Network and then hosted some shows for CNN International and also on CNN's Weekend Morning Passport. And one of my favorite moments is when comedian John Oliver featured some of my segments talking about the World Cup. And I say between comedian John Oliver and I, we helped expose FIFA.
Wow.
But the reality, Michael, is I've spent so much of my life in front of a television camera. And what I'm saying to people right now is you may or may not be in front of a television camera, but we're all in front of our webcams. And the ability to communicate on virtual platforms is actually very different. And so what I'm hoping in our time together, we can remind everyone of what skills it requires to come across authentically and to build trust with patients in a virtual world. But also, how do we use these foundational communication skills in all of our interactions?
And for a lot of physicians, as you well know, you've had those conversations around the coffee table and kitchen table and island at the holidays with your siblings, that they weren't trained to market themselves. They weren't trained as communicators. They didn't receive the same type of training that we do about broadcast journalism and, writing and all those types of things and, posture and what the intangibles of communication. And so I'm going to let you unpack a few of those balls or those bags in the room that I've thrown over there related to, choosing a background. I think for a lot of physicians, they're waiting for this period of time to end and they think that it's going to end soon. So, this isn't as important as it should be. And I can wear whatever I want, whatever I'm wearing, I'm just going to come into the meeting with. And we had a conversation just yesterday with a concierge psychologist, and she was talking about the importance of dress and dress code when you're doing these types of virtual meetings. So I'm going to let you throw some commentary back on some of those comments.
Okay, so for anyone who's watching this, listening to this today, it's a reminder that the way we build trust, we build rapport, it's both verbal, it's the words we use, what you and I are saying right now, but it's also the nonverbal. And what do we mean by nonverbal, Michael? It's the tone of our voice, it's our eye contact, it's our body language. And there's a very famous statistic by Professor Mehrabian, who worked for UCLA probably 60 years ago. And he said only 7% of the way a message is received is what we actually say. He went on to say 93% was divided into 55% was body language, dress, eye contact, and 38% was your vocal tone, etc. So I share Professor Mehrabian just to remind us the power of the nonverbal. I don't think you can say it's definitively 7% and 93%, but what I want to make everyone aware of is when we're with a patient, when we're talking to someone, even you and I just talking now, there's what we're actually saying, but there's how I make you feel. And Maya Angelou famously said, people don't remember what you say, they remember the way you make them feel. And the way you make them feel is a combination of what you say, but equally how you say it. So let's unpack some of the nonverbals. So the nonverbals on a virtual platform, let's start with the eye contact. So looking into my camera is counterintuitive. Why? Because I want to look down at you, the patient, depending on where your camera is. And it's perfectly acceptable to look at another screen, which so many physicians have, or down at your notes, or to be typing, which we know we have to do. But please let your patient know what you're doing. In the absence of proper information, people come to their own conclusions. If I'm talking to you, Michael, and you and I are connecting, and I feel because I'm looking into the camera, you feel like I'm looking at you, and I suddenly turn around and I don't explain, sorry, I'm just looking up your chart for a second, I'm just looking at it, tell people. And we want to be looked at. And the reality is that looking into your camera, and I want people to literally take the middle of their eyes and go like that to their camera. Because what I see so much is that where your computer is positioned is either too low or too high. It's not that difficult to put a few books, put your computer on the books, make sure that you are framed correctly. And it's so interesting because I've been doing these interviews with several physicians on COVID on my streaming platforms. And I spend at least 20 minutes before every session, whether it's my own brothers and sister or whether it's other physicians, just framing the shot. And it's simple. Can you see how simple that is? So even as you're talking to me right now, you're looking at your screen, and I'm saying to you, look at the difference, Michael, when you look at me. Look into your screen right now, right? Look into your camera. Okay, now look at your camera. Now you're looking at me.
Wow.
And it's synonymous to looking at someone. So I've been doing a lot of virtual training with physicians, with medical reps, with all kinds of people. And we begin with something very simple, which is, I recently worked for a big Fortune 500 in their legal team. Please locate the camera on your computer. Now, do you have to have a separate camera? If you want the quality of your picture to be better, I have a simple Logitech. So it's separate. The advantage of separate is it's much clearer and crisper. The disadvantage is that if it's in your computer, it's sometimes closer to the person you're talking to. So can you see how counterintuitive this is? Because I want to look down at Michael.
Yeah.
But when I look down at Michael, I'm not looking at Michael. So like anything else, it's a simple thing, but it requires practice and consciousness. So
and it feels weird to look at a lens and to be staring at a lens because it's not giving me any verbal, it's not giving me any nonverbal feedback.
Correct. So we use our peripheral vision to glance at a person. Now, when I'm training physicians, we're looking at medicine, we're looking at helping people, we're not looking at a performance. So it's something that sometimes people go, what does it matter if I look into the camera? But your looking into the camera is looking at me, and at least do it several times during the interaction. And of course, we know now with physicians, they're so busy typing medical records. And by the way, this isn't only if you're doing it on a virtual platform. I recently went for a flu shot and had a quick visit to the doctor, and he spent so much time looking at his screen because he wanted to make sure his notes were typed. You, Michael, were too young to remember when there was a time, and I grew up with my doctor actually looked at me when I was a little girl, and when I was probably, in my teen years, your doctor looked at you. They weren't so busy writing notes. Now, the challenge that all physicians have is they've got to have these very accurate medical records, right?
Yeah.
So just remember that eye contact, simple eye contact, in between taking your notes, is a nonverbal that says, I'm here, I'm connecting with you.
Wow.
So that's number one in the nonverbal, is the eye contact, eye contact, eye contact. And then you spoke about background, right, Michael?
Yes.
Okay, so what are your thoughts? Before I get to mine, what are your thoughts on backgrounds for positions?
Well, I think that, I saw one position, he had a nice logo, it was clean and simple, and it was on his wall. I've seen some of them try to just have a blank wall, a nicely painted wall. That's their frame of their background. That one was probably the easiest to see, with a kind of a green painted wall behind her. But we've also seen, them in cluttered environments, a lot of clutter. And mine is not a lot different, but I'm doing the best I can. But what we're trying to communicate is really more of a theme. And so, I think playing with outdoor backgrounds, because I'm a scout master, assistant scout master as well. I see the kids play with those backgrounds all the time. That can be very distracting if you're playing with backgrounds. Patients might be doing that. Having kids run into the room. Certainly, we've seen physicians try to take their meetings outdoors, and then you have birds chirping in the background. So some of those things add a lot of distraction. And I think what we're trying to do with backgrounds is create and eliminate distractions. I'll let
Okay,
you comment.
so if you notice, I've now changed my background. I'm now in a rather lovely living room. I am using a virtual background because I have chosen to have a green screen. And the reason I've chosen as a professional speaker to have a green screen is I actually key in my slides in the background.
Mm-hmm.
The key to your background is it enhancing the overall way you want to be perceived? So is it distracting or is it enhancing? So what's an enhancing background? Something that may show a little personality, definitely tidy and fairly neutral. You're a physician, right? If you happen to be in the Bahamas or you have a background of Bahamas of trees blowing because you think that's a cool background, I don't have a problem with that as long as you explain to the person you're talking to. By the way, I hope you're noticing my Bahamas background because that's where I wish I was right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got to make sense.
Absolutely.
That's most important. You know, we're looking, you said it earlier. What are we looking for, Michael? We're looking for authenticity. We're looking for connection. I want to be able to connect with you. So in the same way that I really ask you to take a photo of your background and say, is this how I want to be perceived? People do notice. Harvard has come up with research that says it takes under a second for someone to make a decision about you. And you as a physician want to come across as credible, authentic, legitimate, but also compassionate. So, you know, what is my background saying? And then number two, notice the background of your patient. It's a wonderful conversation starter. Oh, I see you've got X. Are you a fisherman? And I know we're all managing our time, but having that moment of, I see you have an interesting X in your background is a chance to connect. And it is much easier to connect in person organically than it is virtually. And that's why I recommend to physicians that you take every opportunity you can to really connect. And so for you, you don't want a background that's distracting. And for your patient, take a moment and observe if there's something that you can start a conversation around.
And so our guest today is Nadia Bilchik. She is the president of Greater Impact Communication. And if we were wanting to get in touch with you, Nadia, what's the best way in order to do that? Read more about what you've been doing and how you're helping doctors and others, companies do this. What's your websites? And
yes, since March 13th, all I have done is virtual training on virtual presence. My website is nadiaspeaks.com. And really my mantra has been, Michael, is that don't underestimate the transition from an in-person to a virtual world. However, all of these foundational communication things, which is deep respect for the person you're speaking to. And what I see with physicians right now, and I'm sure you do too, there's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of exhaustion.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of jadedness. I'm exhausted. I've got so many patients I've got to see. So how do we bring our full selves and our energized selves to every interaction? And as I said earlier, if anyone's just joining us now, there's two aspects to communication. There's the verbal. So I can look at you and I can go, morning, Michael, how are you doing? I'm very interested to hear, and not sound interested. How often have you been to a restaurant or had an experience with a service provider on any level who it's not what they say that puts you off, it's how they say it?
Yeah.
You know, you can't tell me you're deeply interested in me, but you're shuffling papers and you don't make eye contact once and you look flustered and bored.
Yeah. Well, and our guest today is Nadia Bilchik. She's the president of Greater Impact Communication. And, you know, I want to jump on that fatigue and that burnout thing because we certainly do our work. I mean, our focused work is on helping physicians relieve or kind of find that pressure release valve related to physician burnout. But as many of the physicians who are watching this know, and we've said this in other speaking sessions as well, is that I'm not a physician, but I am a patient. So I know what it's like to sit on the other side of you. And I can tell from our communities, the people that we interact with, the people that we see at the grocery store, the friends that we talk to, you know, virtually now, that there's a lot of burnout, patient fatigue. And and the research is bearing this out, even just in this COVID time and pre-COVID and now in the COVID, patients are saying, hey, we asked them a question, if your doctor's office closed tomorrow, how much or how little would you actually care? Over 80% said, yeah, wouldn't make a difference to me. Like,
Wow,
yeah,
Michael.
really, it's more inconvenient from a paper records perspective. And so on this fatigue, this patient burnout, I want to address the patient burnout side because, you know, a lot of physicians are trying to maintain that connection, but also a lot of doctors have gone radio silent on their patients during this time. They're like, I just don't know what to say. They're getting inundated with all kinds of Facebook feeds and news feeds. And
Yes.
so talk to us a little bit about how to authentically connect, you know, and make that connection with the patient that's really, you know, makes them feel like I'm the only person in the room when I truly am the only person in the room.
Isn't that the truth? And you know, these skills can be taught. And obviously we look for authenticity, right? But the ability to just take a moment and say, this is somebody's mother, this is somebody's daughter, this is somebody's aunt. You know, it's very interesting. My mother is 82 years old and she lives in Johannesburg, South Africa. And she'll come back from a doctor and say, that was such a lovely doctor. They asked me about you guys. They asked me about the children. And it doesn't take long to show genuine interest, right? And conversely, she'll say, I went to go and see this doctor for this. And they don't give her the time of day because what do they see? They see an 82-year-old old woman and they aren't particularly interested. And that reminder of the importance that your presence, your overall brand, how you show up in the minds of people. You know, what is a brand? A brand for a product or a company is like a reputation for a person. Your reputation is made up of how you come across. Do you have great presence? Are you charismatic? But equally, how do you make other people feel? And genuinely listening and asking one question. What's been your biggest challenge during COVID? What's something you've learned? You know, the sweet and the sour, but that's showing genuine interest. There is just no substitute for it.
Wow.
Michael, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to some non-verbals, if you don't mind, just while it's on my mind.
Please.
Is we spoke about the importance of eye contact in these sessions, not all the time, and if you look away, explaining what you're doing, but just looking into your camera is synonymous with looking at the patient. In the same way that if you're in person with the patient, connecting them with eye contact in between you taking your notes is critical. Number two is lighting. So often, and I see this with physicians who are doing telemedicine and who come onto my calls, their lighting is not bright enough.
Yeah.
It is not difficult to take lamps from another part of your house, take off the shade and put those lamps in front of you. If you have a very bright window behind you, what you look like is a cardboard cutout, or you look like you're in the witness protection program. We are trying to establish trust. It's hard to establish trust with someone you can't see. So it's so simple. And this is what I'm day in and day out, I do these sessions. And I just want to literally say to people, I happen to have professional, it's called newer lighting, Neewer, or go online, Amazon, and buy a ring light.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that difficult to be bright enough so that people can actually see your face. Simple, simple, simple things.
Yeah.
So background, we spoke about lighting, eye contact, and then just your level of energy. And that links into, you know, whether it's patient burnout or physician burnout. And like everyone, sometimes you just got to dial it in. You know, there are days where you are personally, you've got kids at home, you've got a spouse who's not working or going through things. I know many, many physicians whose practices have changed because they're now going to do all the social distancing. They can't see the amount of people they were seeing. So what is your overall mood? Because people can feel and sense your energy. So I've actually got an acronym that I wanted to share with you, and I thought that would be very helpful. I'm going to give you this acronym, and I'm actually going to put it in my background for those of you who are watching us.
Great.
If you're listening to us, then I'm going to share the background. And This is my acronym for all of you concierge physicians today. And the first is the F, is how do you feel about yourself? Which means physically, am I looking into the camera? Do I have good lighting? Do I have an appropriate background? Is my computer elevated so that I am being seen from the waist up? Because as it is, we see so very little of you. I've seen people do telemedicine with where I only see their head. I miss out on the body language. So, and feeling good about yourself also requires that you take a deep breath and that you exude a level of, I'm happy to be with you here today. Sometimes harder, right?
Oh, yeah.
The I, which you spoke about, which is the showing genuine interest. You know, Bill Nye, the science guy, always says, everyone you meet knows something you don't. And that's true of your patients too. What can I learn? What does this person know? What's their life experience been? And people can sense if you genuinely see them as a human being. Every year I speak to a group of interventional pulmonologists. This will be my first year that I'm doing it virtually. And these are fellows. They're the brightest of the bright, academically brilliant. And when I go through lighting a fire, I cannot tell you over the years that I've been doing this, some people say, Nadia, it's so simple, but I don't ever walk into a consult, be it in person or virtually, without saying, how am I feeling about myself? Am I remembering to show genuine interest, verbally and non-verbally? And sometimes you've got a very short amount of time, but in those couple of minutes, are you showing genuine interest? Do they get a sense you're fully present? Then the R of lighting a fire is one, to relax, but it's also the focus on relationships. Your
No, go ahead.
is the person you relate to, and are we building these relationships? And not only with your patients, with other physicians. And the E is to engage with energy, excitement, and enthusiasm.
And so, you know, when we're moving from one Zoom meeting to another and staring at the camera or staring at a screen, you know, it's very difficult to have that energy and that enthusiasm. And, you know, you're complaining about how hard your day was, or you come in distracted, disoriented. You know, hey, I just got back from my kid's baseball game. I'm so sorry. I was at another doctor's appointment, you know, with my kids. Yeah, that's great. And I understand that you're busy too. And I'm just grateful for your time, doctor. But, you know, at the same time, that makes me feel like I'm maybe not a priority. And so how much should we be talking about, you know, how much should we be complaining as part of our brand? You know, I'm the victim. How much should we be, you know, bringing in? Should we just, you know, start gangbusters? Hey, I'm here. What's going on today? I'm really happy to see you. How do we muster up that energy?
You know, so what Michael is talking about is, it's all very well, you as the physician being positive and having good energy, having good background lighting, but your patient is maybe quite flat and maybe distracted and maybe hasn't respected you in the way that you should, and maybe late and maybe they disheveled. Well, Michael, our role right now is to coach physicians, right? We cannot control our patients. We can't. We can't say to the patient, oh, by the way, I'm talking to you at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Please show up with energy, excitement, and enthusiasm and be very grateful for my time. One thing we know in the world of communication, the only thing we have control over is ourselves. What we can say to a patient is, my sense is you've got a lot going on right now. Do you need to reschedule? Because there's no way.
I meant the question from a physician's perspective, that they've been on these Zoom calls and they're fatigued, you know, and saying like, I don't know how I'm going to do the next 3. I got 3 more hours of this.
Oh, yeah. You know, I'd be saying very practical things. Stand up, walk around, have a cup of coffee. And it's perfectly okay to say to your patients, hi, Michael, I'm really happy to be here. Forgive me if X and Y happens. I've just been to. That's okay. Be authentic. I hope you don't mind. I've still got my baseball cap on. I just went to my kid's game, but I'm really happy to be here with you. Mm-hmm. You know, that's okay. I certainly, as the patient, you know, we say be honest, be authentic. I mean, I don't want to know that you were 40 minutes late because what are your thoughts? I'm sure you coach people to say be as professional as you can. However, if you are late or if something happened, don't just walk in like you should be so lucky to see me. And yes, you've waited for whatever. And I appreciate if a physician says, apologies about being late, we had an emergency, but honoring another person is critical.
I think it was an author, I can't remember who said it, but nothing sounds as sweet as a person's first name when you first meet them. And I love that quote from an author, I can't remember who at the moment
then Michael, to your point, get the person's name right. I was actually at the doctor's, this is pre-COVID, and I was sitting with a gentleman in the waiting room, and he was so irritated because he says they always get his name wrong. You know, so obviously those things are important. And you did that so well at the beginning of today's call, which is even if you go, I know, so just remind me how I pronounce your name again.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay to do that. A good trick for remembering people's names is to do an association. So it's easy with you with a name like Michael, then I think, okay, my nephew's name's Michael. But if it's a very difficult name, like one of the women that I coach, her name is Shimini. Now, Shimini, for some reason, is always difficult. And I had such a hard time remembering her name. And then I thought about Shimon Peres, the former Israeli Prime Minister's knee, Shimoni. Now I always remember it. But, you know, it's going back to each person wants to be honored, wants to be appreciated. And I think it's perfectly okay that sometimes you sit down and you go, forgive me if I've just had to deal with, but now I'm all yours.
It'll be interesting as we exit, 2020, and we look back on maybe timely schedules and records of calendars and how much more on time or maybe running late that maybe different physicians were. And I don't think we can get access to that data just yet, but I'm sure somebody's going to publish it somewhere where because of virtual calls and virtual visits, the doctors were running on time better because it was to have to reschedule a Zoom call and run 30 minutes late all day means you're also scheduling everybody else. It's a headache and a hassle. And our guest today is Nadia Bilchik. She is the president of Greater Impact Communication. And you can learn more about Nadia and connect with her and be coached and learn a lot more about this type of stuff at nadiaspeaks.com. Did I get that correct?
You are spot on, Michael.
And so I want to talk a little bit about, some of the logistics. It is a little bit harder, I've heard, to find a Logitech HDMI camera these days, but it is possible. It's not.
Oh no, they're very easy. The difference is the price has gone up. So pre-COVID, they were like $49.99. Then they went to $249. But you can, on Amazon, there's now a plethora of different computer cameras that you can find. Yeah. And again, it's why am I getting the camera that's separate? Because I want to be sharper, because I want to communicate better with my patients, and I want them to see me more clearly. But if you're using your computer camera, which is totally fine, make sure your lighting is decent, make sure you're looking into the camera, you know where it is. If you look down or you look away and it doesn't make sense, as I'm now repeating, make sure that the patient knows. But just, it's so interesting, Michael. I interviewed Deepak Chopra recently, and he reminded me of something so important. And he's been speaking about this for years, and it's hardly anything novel, but the concept of being present. So you've got a million things on your mind right now. I mean, Michael and I are taking time to present you this information because we care about you. And I must say, Michael, the service you offer is extraordinary, and you want to keep learning and offering a better and better, more advice, guidance to the people you support. So congratulations to you on that. Is that we've got a lot going on. While I've been talking to you, I've heard my dogs barking. I've heard my husband coming in and out. I've got 3 other calls. I'm thinking about my panel. But in this moment, do you have the skill to be fully present? And being fully present is something that requires a great deal of concentration, because we've all got so much going on. So people can sense if you're fully present, they can sense if you're there, they can sense if you see them as a real person. And it's just that reminder that our reputation, our brand, how we are perceived is made up of all these little moments. I also want to remind something to physicians, and this is something I know near and dear to everyone's heart, is people are writing reviews now, right? People write your reviews. Patients are so much more forgiving and so much more likely to write you a nice review, even if something slightly goes wrong or whatever, if you're kind to them, if you give them the time of day.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hate to bring that up as a reason to certainly care for your patients, but you know, when you look back and go, yes, I was a bit dismissive with that person, or maybe I didn't pay them the attention that I should have. Now, it's very easy. Think about this for a moment. It's very easy to pay attention when someone's vibrant and interesting and naturally, maybe you've got something in common with them, but your elderly patients or your, and this is something that I reinforce with the pulmonologists every single year is, just remember, in this age of social media, people are so much more forgiving if you are extremely kind and pay attention to them. And if you look at physician reviews, so much is not on a procedure or what went wrong. It's this person was abrupt. Their bedside manner was terrible.
Yeah.
So just a reminder.
No, that's excellent advice. And I know I remember even having a conversation, because you sparked something in my own mind. A conversation I had with my wife just this week was, she's a 8th grade math teacher in one of the most popular counties here in Georgia. And, students are coming back, asynchronous schedules and so on. And she said, I've become an IT person, coaching parents on how to use this type of technology. And for many physicians, you're probably in that same boat where you're having to instruct them, no, I can't see you, So let's talk a little bit about green screens. This is not the end of the road, and it's not the last breakout session we've just unlocked for the day. Don't forget to go back and check out the other digitally unlocked videos that we've released. There's a ton of content, a ton of topics that you're going to want to unpack and dive deeper into in the next few hours, days, and weeks to come. So go back to day 1, 2, or 3 and check out the breakout sessions and the general sessions. Feel free to continue to comment on those sessions, even if you're watching the replays. We're continuing to monitor and watch those threads and try to answer all of your questions and comments as the next few days and weeks unfold. So go check out those other videos in day 1, 2, and 3, because there's a ton of great content. Thank you for doing all that you do. Again, it's not about being the best doctor in the world any longer. It's about being the best doctor for the world, for your patients, and for your local community. And we are for you.
Let the notes flow, it's simple.